Better fades, guys. Anyway, welcome to the Scary Alvarez podcast. I'll tentatively title this one Wisconsin is Ficked. But it's going to be a bit of a where do we go from here show, given the news that was dropped yesterday by Jesse Temple in a very curated segment with Chris McIntosh. Basically told us what many of us suspected was going to be the case. Luke Fickell will be returning to the Wisconsin sideline in 2026. And I want to focus on some of the hows, what's, where's, and whys of what happened yesterday, what it means, all that kind of stuff. And I have a couple of great guests today. Got Dillon Graff from Badger Notes and many other things, and Matt Perkins from Believin' and many other things. Welcome aboard, gentlemen. I like to bring some of the cool voices of Wisconsin Badger sports together, and this is no exception. So glad to have you on board.
Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This is the honor of a lifetime, I'm sure, for everyone. I know, Matt, we've had some, and Dillon, both of us, we've had some shows before, so this is old hat, but it's always exciting, like the first time you meet John Bon Jovi. So Mac, as I alluded to in the beginning, says that Luke Fickell is going to be back in 2026. And I'll start, Matt, with you. Give me your elevator pitch for what that means going forward for the Wisconsin football program.
I think it means that Mac knows that he is tied to Fick at the hip. And if he were to depose him, he'd basically be deposing himself, because we knew from this hire from the jump that he and Fick were going to be sort of a tandem no matter what, especially when you kind of throw everything out, throw all of like the Badgerdom out, if you will, between, all the coaches who had been alumni and people who had been part of the program for a long time. I think he knows that he couldn't fire Fickell without probably risking his own job. And yeah, that puts his own job on the line again for next year, but he's buying himself another year.
Yeah, and Matt, Dylan, I'll get to you in a second. This kind of a quick reaction to that. I understand the psychology behind doing this. He knows he's tied, to Fickell, so bringing back Fickell might help him. But I could flip that around and say he knows he's tied to Fickell. So unless there's some understanding that he is gone, if Fickell's gone, I'm not sure that we're there. There's still a puzzling aspect to this where he's doubling down on something that clearly is not working, knowing he is on that same boat. It's just bizarre to me. Dillon, what are your thoughts on this as far as the kind of top line, what this says about Macintosh?
I think that there's a few different things you can kind of pull out of that. I mean, obviously is that he's tied to Fickell and he knows that, but I think it's an outright admittance that, the model that they thought they were going to succeed in during the NIL era, they were wildly underprepared for. And this is this is me reading between the lines, of course, but like, this is them admitting that they were wrong, that they were not in the ballpark. And when he talks about the investment that they want to make in all of this, and I'll take this with a grain of salt, because with Macintosh, with Fickell, there's been a lot of overpromising, under-delivering, but they're talking about making some type of investment here that aligns with the programs they want to compete with. And then he goes on to outline the programs that they want to compete with being at the very top of the Big Ten. And, he says a lot of conflicting things throughout some of the interviews, but to me, to utilize that language, to me would suggest that they feel very confident that there is a significant influx of money and resources coming in, or otherwise, what is the point of doing this media tour and parading around and kind of shouting from the mountaintops that you're going to back somebody, 3 years into what's been an absolute disaster.
But to me, it's like, what does that investment even mean? Like, does that mean invest in NIL? Does that mean invest? I mean, like, we know they've been doing big facilities upgrades. Does that mean investing in coaching staff and support staff and recruiting? Like you can say you're investing this money, whether it's $10 million or whatever it is, but like, what are you actually investing it in? And I'm still unclear of that.
I think that they were deliberately unclear about that. And I think that's part of
what else is new.
Right.
What else is new?
Exactly.
It's
we're going to find as many ways
platitudes.
to say some buzzwords without actually providing any context or a plan. It's hard for me to believe the language and the confidence that they're coming from for a million reasons that I'm sure we'll discuss. But But if he is not correct in his assumption that they have the resources to field the product that they're going to have to after talking like this, obviously he knows it's his job. But the way that they're talking, they've got to be pretty confident in something. Otherwise, why would you do this? Why would you not try to do this whole PR stunt more privately, I guess? So my big takeaway is that they must know something that they're admitting that they were underprepared, and suddenly now they're feeling like they have this influx of resources. I don't know if they're,
or they know
wrong.
that if they got rid of him, Wisconsin's like the eighth best job available this cycle, like with LSU and Florida and Penn State all already open, and if Lane Kiffin takes one of those bigger jobs, Ole Miss becomes available. You could see some much bigger programs with much deeper pockets become available, and then who does Wisconsin end up with? Like, are you pulling some guy from the MAC? Are you going back to a different well? And I think that is part of the rationale behind this as well.
It has to be, right? It has to come down to them trying to be fiscally responsible, and there's at least, it's hard to use any other word other than excuses, but at least there's things that they can point to try and say it hasn't worked because X, Y, and Z, and now we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and it's the last card they have left to play.
That's all. I mean, I agree with what all y'all said in there. That's all very rational. It's rational in the sense of the way you're saying it. It's not rational to me in the sense of how it is being unfurled. I did this, and this is not. I want to be clear that anyone watching this, I am the deep lover of the Wisconsin Badger football program. That is not going to change no matter. It's like ingrained in me. So I do not take any pride or joy in seeing failure. It's the opposite of that. But given my feelings on the current regime, I don't think I've been subtle about it, and their shortcomings, of which we don't have time on this podcast to go over each one of them. I did check on to some of the ticket brokers last night to see what's what with this Washington game. This is a ranked Washington Husky squad. I believe they're 23 in the new college football playoff rankings. Bringing a nice team in. And first time these teams have played, I believe, since the early 90s. So there's an intrigue there. And I was able to find a 50-yard line seat, 15 rows up for $14, guys. Okay. That is hardly an outlier. You can get in for $6, $7. And these are taxes and fees included. This isn't like one of those ticket things where you buy it for $7 and it ends up being $90. It is the bottom has completely fallen out of the secondary ticket market for the Wisconsin Badger football team. I don't think it's that shocking, but it is a little shocking at just how much it has fallen out. And people are trying to, again, the same people who are like, Fick's going to be fine. There's not many of them out there, are like, well, it's going to be rainy and cold and windy. Like, it's a November game in Madison, Wisconsin. What are we even doing here? That is what you pretty much have when you play in November in Wisconsin. So I don't take that to be any sign. But I just wanted to throw that out there for anyone who's watching that show and you're looking to, maybe you're a masochist and you're looking for a miserable game on Saturday instead of watching interesting teams from the cozy couch. Hook up, and maybe by today, I've not looked again. Maybe those are cheaper than they were. So just so you know that. This is one where I feel like, again, I'm not trying to pile on, and I know you guys are professionals, and this is not, I don't have no hate for Chris McIntosh. This is not, I don't have any inherent, I love watching him block for the Badgers many years ago. Is he just bad at his job, guys? I mean, it seems like any one of us could go in there, and I know there's intricacies that we don't deal with that must be very difficult, but we seem to be getting the same response for everything he does. It seems very amateurish. So from the media messaging on down to the job he's done with hiring and firing, and so what's your grade or assessment on Chris McIntosh right now in his, I guess, fourth year?
It's so hard to pinpoint some of the things, right? Like, and the reason being, when you hire Luke Fickell, in process alone, it was, pretty easy to agree with. Obviously, it upset a certain contingent of the fan base, and with hindsight being 2020, I think a lot of people feel really vindicated, that we're maybe against the Fickell hire. But I think part of we start talking about the buyout, handing out that richest contract. I think part of why that piece is so pronounced right now is because of his handling of the end of the Paul Chryst era. And I'm not here to rehash any of those things. or even talk about whether or not he should or shouldn't have been fired. But because of how quickly and hastily, that firing happened as a guy who had a lot of success, I think that kind of in turn, they were having to pay that premium dollar to Fickle, not only just to get him to Wisconsin, but then provide him all of these, additional incentives, because you need to know that you're going to have the time for it to work. If you're Fickle, you just watched your new boss pretty hastily fire a guy who had a lot of success. And I know there was that little bit of downturn. So I think that they're kind of having to eat that decision. But as it speaks to just, Macintosh as a whole, I mean, you can look at kind of some of the things happening in the women's basketball program that they're dealing with, on the legal end, just the handling of the fan
track
base
and field program
matter to them, right?
Yes.
The Olympic sports in all of it. And I understand. And this is where I'm going to give a monicum of grace to him, is that there was no playbook in how to handle this NIL era. And what I will say is I think that they grossly mishandled or misjudged what it was going to take to compete in this space. And because of their inability to have that foresight to, cross-reference to figure out what it was going to take and then go and make those things happen, like all of those things have to ultimately fall on him. It's tough when you don't know what you're competing against, but I think that is started to become more transparent in all of this. And, just the media shitstorm and the way that they've decided to kind of handle things from a PR standpoint, I think have come across really tone deaf to a really, apathetic fan base, frustrated fan base. And so much of that position is going to be your perception, because perception ultimately is reality. And so I think you got to probably, given the totality of work, you got to throw a grade on it. I guess you can give me a D+. They've made some moves to financially try to make some money, and it's very clear that's been the priority. But it's hard to point to a lot of really significant successes right now, other than leaving alone the Kelly Sheffields, the Mark Johnsons, and the Greg Gard, just leaving them alone.
Yeah. And for me, I think a lot of the criticism that I hear the most comes from former players and former student athletes who feel that the athletic department administration has completely disengaged from them and has left them out to dry in a lot of ways. In that, in previous regimes, former UW student athletes were taken care of by the athletic department. You want to come back to a game, we'll make it happen. We'll have, events for you guys that are taken care of. Don't worry about paying, we'll get you here, and that has completely gone away. Unless you are a gigantic name, unless you are Moneyball, unless you are, Joe Thomas, some of the other players are completely blown off by the administration. And I think that you've lost a significant amount of support from alumni who have a voice, whether it's in the media, on social media. And I think that goes a long way to damaging the overall reputation of not just the athletic department, but the school at large, right? And so the downfall of the football program, it affects fundraising for the university as a whole. My podcast partner, Matt Bernstein, works for the UW Foundation, raising money for the school. And guess what? Donations are down when the football team is down. It's a statistical fact. And so the mishandling of football in particular, but the athletic department as a whole, has gigantic financial ramifications for the university at large.
Seeing the donations down, which of course is going to continue to happen, just seems so strange. Not strange in terms of logic; it makes sense that they'd be down, but strange in terms of the other side when Macintosh is saying, "Oh, but we understand the financial realities, and now we're going to remedy that." It seems like you're like running in quicksand now, because the very thing that you need to improve. I understand they're big donors, and that's a little different track we're working with here, guys. But
yeah, but how much more money can Kellner give?
Yeah. Well, hopefully a lot, because it doesn't sound like again. I'm not some booster whisperer, Dillon and Matt, but I've talked to a few that give more than your average UW club donation, and they are apoplectic about this. about what is going on. Some of them, in the media. So, Dylan, you want to pipe in there? What's up?
I think that this to me speaks to that there's going to be to me, the only way I can make sense of the way that they're delivering, this talk of investment in retention in the portal and their coaching staff is if they've just gone corporate and found some strong corporate partnerships. I think that that's the only, I don't think you're getting those individual donors if you don't come up with these, corporate partnerships to invest real money in it that you can consistently, have pouring into the program. I don't even know why you would want to comfortably talk about this out in the open.
If you can get those big corporate partnerships, though, Dylan, I've raised this in the past. If the big money is that big, then why are you so afraid of changing course then with the coach, where you can probably do better reaching back in the lottery bag? I cannot reconcile those 2 points. Anyway, let me move on really quickly to another kind of thematically similar point, but over under on the number of different coaches, assistant coaches, obviously, from coordinators on down, that Wisconsin is going to have in 2026. Matt, why don't you start with you?
Like, how many are going to be gone, or how many are going to be retained?
How many total different ones? So yes, it's going to be a function of how many are gone. So if for example 4 are fired and replaced, that would be the 4.
I'm going to say 3. I don't see them making massive moves again, unless there is an exodus by the guys to other programs. But I also don't see a ton of other programs trying to poach guys from the Wisconsin staff, given the product that they've seen on the field. So I think that there are a couple guys who might be in trouble, but I would say out of whatever you want to call the 10 or the 12 coaches who are sort of right in there with the position groups, I'm going to say 3.
Okay. Would one of those include a coordinator?
No.
Yikes.
I think 3 sounds reasonable to me as well. And if it was up to me, it would include a coordinator. I question whether or not that will be the case. And if it's not the case, then I think that in those position coaches that you would be replacing, you need to be bringing in, an experience level that helps elevate the staff outside of them. Maybe it's somebody who's got significant coordinator experience. I don't know what the answer is, but I think there are several positions and on this coaching staff where Fickle is either misfired or has somebody maybe not quite as qualified as you would love to see on a Big Ten caliber staff. And I understand that they're ultimately being judged by the product on the field, and there's been a lot of injuries, and don't need to rehash the talent level and all of those pieces. But I think that their hiring of some of their staff members has been a downfall for them a little bit as well. So
I agree. Your numbers are probably more conservative than mine, but mine are more wish list numbers. And again, this isn't like going after people show, but the reality is, I think if you talk to anyone who knows football, we need to take a serious look at offensive line. I think we need to take a serious look at the defensive secondary, possibly the running backs room. I don't know. Again, it's not going after these some good dudes. Like, there's nothing. I have nothing against anyone, but like, if I'm going on my podcast and I start talking in Swahili or Czech, and people are wondering why my numbers are down, they could say maybe I suck at what I'm doing. I know that's a microcosm, but like, just seeing the Wisconsin, I understand injuries gets you so far, and then it gets you fired. And injuries, Dillon, Matt, I know from your shows, we have given incredible quarter to these coaches for the injuries at quarterback and whatnot. But at the end of the day, man, either you have the product in the field or you don't.
I think the injuries, obviously you pay some attention to it, but ultimately as a position coach, it's next man up. And how well do you have that player prepared to put them in positions to succeed? And I don't think that we can say for a lot of those position groups that the next man up has been a net neutral in many cases at all. And I think that speaks to, kind of some shortcomings in those areas. And to me, it's not necessarily always them having to equal a net neutral, but given the talent level that we perceive them to have and where they're at in their development, what are we extracting from them in an actual game situation, even if it is out of necessity? And I think that's the piece to me that's been pretty underwhelming in a number of different cases.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's turn the time ahead to 2027. It'll be there before we know it. Matt, I'm going to ask you this too, Dillon, and give you a little extra time to think about it. Matt, is Luke Fickell the Wisconsin head coach in 2027?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like, even with an easier schedule next year, it's hard for me to imagine this team getting more than 5 wins and 3 straight losing seasons, man. Like, after coming off of whatever that bowl streak was, 20 something years, is going to be, and frankly, assuming that happens, I don't think Chris McIntosh is the athletic director anymore either.
Okay, that's what some Badger fans would say is an optimistic view. Dillon, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I fall in a very similar boat. I think there's absolutely no way. I think that ultimately Chris McIntosh will probably, be right behind him. But I think with the way that you're talking about this, the song that you're trying to sell right now and the investment that you're, supposedly going to be making into this roster, even given the schedule next year being lighter, to me, I feel like you're setting yourselves up to have to go from a 2, if we're being optimistic, a 3-win season to me, if you don't win 7 or 8 at a minimum, I think has got to be that floor of expectation that you are setting with what you are trying to articulate to us. If you fall short of that in any way, there's no way you can even pretend to sell us on a 2027. There's no way. So to me, that's way too big of a leap for me to think that they can take when I have watched a poorly coached football team for 3 years in a row, and a team that's routinely not prepared. I mean, I don't know. I that's way too big of a leap for me to take, regardless of what that investment looks like and their ability to prepare a team on Saturdays. I just, there's no way to me.
Yeah, teams gotten worse. Yeah, teams gotten worse every year, and if anything short of 8 wins means you need to clean house after 26.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I don't know if that's just my hopes and fears playing into this, but there was something, and it may be, people have lifted it out of context, but there was something in Macintosh's chat yesterday with Jesse that something to the effect of he for the first time mentioned it isn't about wins and losses. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but was there not something like that where he said he made a statement of that sort? And then with that,
success isn't measured in wins and losses. What he said, and 3 years ago when Fickle was hired, they're talking about championships, and so. Yeah. Also, this is very high level collegiate athletics. It's a mega multi-million-dollar industry, billion-dollar industry, across the country. How else are you going to measure success? Like, if you're not measuring wins and losses, what is the other measure of success? How much money you're making? Well, how much money you're making is based on how much you win. And so, like, to me, that was the most asinine thing to come out of that entire conversation.
I could not agree more. I mean, it's not limited to wins and losses. Well, your collective jobs is for that to be the bottom line and for that to be how it's measured, and guaranteeing that you have a value to the university and your role moving forward. I'm tired of, Luke talked about, this week about how, there's been an internal growth, that hasn't really been seen so much externally. Well, I'm sorry, but you are paid to do the external part. So forgive me if, that's the part that people are choosing to judge you on. I guess at this point, how else do you try to spin the season at hand other than saying, that, we haven't lost the locker room, the culture is still intact. These are the things, this internal growth, this is all that they can try to claim at this point. And so to say, for the messaging to change that much from November 2022 to November 2025 is just, I don't know. That's the state of where we're at.
It's baffling.
This is public. This is like MATC introductory level communications PR class level stuff we're seeing here, guys. I'm just going to be brutally honest with you. This is I know we have paid consultants on staff and probably some good family people. It's not trying to attack them personally, but the messaging has been so horrible and so poorly done. I know it's always a work in progress because every game is different. Than the season changes, but pardon me, I can edit this out later.
Well, I mean, listen, I work
Pick up smoking.
I work in communications and marketing for my 9 to 5. And I can tell you, looking at the release yesterday, from my experience in that field, that there was very little thought put into that messaging. And it seemed in some ways they were just speaking off the cuff. And when you are making that level of announcement with that level of impact for not just the team, not just the athletic department, but the university as a whole, you did not work with anyone who has experience in corporate communications.
These are freshman mistakes, guys. I mean, there's no other way to look. These are redshirt freshman mistakes. These are just brutal. I want to get y'all out of here before the 30-minute mark. So let's, we could talk about this for obviously like 6 hours probably. Dillon, you run some longer podcasts. You guys get the beer flowing. You guys pull it to an hour and a half. I got to do it quicker than that. It's in my lease. But Wisconsin, Washington prediction. I'm going to set the scene. Rainy, a little bit of snow, probably hovering around 40 degrees tomorrow, 3:30. And you got, conservatively, I'm going to say half the stadium full. That's probably a cheat in Wisconsin's favor. Dillon, how's that game going to go tomorrow? Just in 100 words.
Give me Washington by at least 2 scores. To me, maybe it falls into that 28 or 31-10. I'm just going to try to be optimistic in that, the offense is going to see some changes this week, and maybe that inspires a little bit of faith and they can move the football a little bit. There's some things to grow on defensively. I think the defense has been playing incredibly hard, and I continue to have some confidence in them. But said before the season, I think Washington is a good football team. They have a good quarterback, and I think they actually are pretty well coached on top of it. I think ultimately Wisconsin will fight because of the weather. I think that will certainly help them attempt to limit possessions, but they're just a team that continues to show they can't take away the football. They can't give a struggling offense a short field. The defense is, in turn also being put in compromising positions all the time. It's just hard for me to envision a world where scoring more than 10 even feels possible. So I'm going to go 31-10 Washington in a game where Wisconsin fights for a while, but ultimately we never feel like we're a threat to win.
Washington 27-6, hammer the under. Washington is not nearly as good on the road as they are at home, but I still don't have confidence that Wisconsin's going to be able to move the ball no matter who is under center. And I think that, like Dillon said, Jamal Williams is a really good quarterback, and he's going to find a way to exploit some of the weaknesses in Wisconsin's secondary. I do think Wisconsin will be able to limit their rushing attack, but even the rain, I do have faith that a team from the Pacific Northwest, who is very used to the rain, will be able to move the ball through the air.
I think they're going to do it, and I'm going to say 29-3 Washington. I like picking weird numbers. Scorigami, I don't know, but it's probably not going to be great. And, I think you're both correct. The defensive side, at least, you've held the room. I mean, there's been really, after the Iowa game, there's been some pretty good efforts, I think, defensively. But you're a 20-year-old kid, and you're looking up there, and it's cold and miserable, and you have 2 wins on the season, and you see student section that's a third full, and you see a stadium that's half full. I don't know, man. We'll see what these guys are made of. That's what I'll say. But thank you all for hopping on. These used to be more fun. I think when we were talking about at least the hope, even after a 5-win season last year, there was some hope, and I took it hook, line, and sinker, guys. And I've already said my stories for being wrong on Fickle. He's not the right guy. But anyway, on Wisconsin, I always want to see it. And hey, guys, if it's like 7-3 at halftime, and Wisconsin's hanging in there, no one's going to be cheering harder than me. I mean, I still want them to win these games, and I know you all feel similarly. So, on Wisconsin, and until we talk again, hope there's better news next time we chat.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.